I'm Forrest Tanaka, and today I'm going to talk about fireworks photography. Now, here in the United States, we're coming up on July 4th, which is our Independence Day, and we celebrate with fireworks. And it's really one of my most favorite kinds of photography to do. It's just a lot of fun, and you come up with some really cool photos. And so I thought I'd cover how I handle fireworks photography. So I'm going to talk about exposure, equipment, and a couple little tricks you can try in your fireworks photography. Now on equipment, I'm going to focus on using a DSLR. Now you can take okay fireworks photos using a cell phone camera or a compact camera, but really what you need is a camera where you have complete control over your exposure. Manual control over your ISO, manual control over your aperture, and a shutter that can be set to bulb mode. Now, what bulb mode is a mode on your camera where the shutter stays open as long as you have the shutter button pressed. And so, without that, fireworks photography becomes really difficult, and I'll get more into that. So, I have here a Canon 40D and with a 50 millimeter lens. Now the size of your lens just depends on how far away you are from the fireworks. I've done photograph fireworks at 24 millimeters when I was close, and I've done it at 200 millimeters when I was farther away. So if you're not sure where you're going to be, make sure you bring a nice set of lenses to cover a nice range. As I mentioned, you'll be using bulb mode, and if you're going to use bulb mode, you better have one of these. This is a remote shutter release. You don't need a fancy one. It's just something that you can hold the shutter down as long as you want. And so this is just a basic Canon one. It just has one button. That is just a remote version of the built-in button. You'll also need a tripod. Here's a Manfrotto tripod. Make sure it's really a stable one. A lot of times these fireworks shows are at beaches or near beaches, so that's not the greatest place to put your tripod, but that may be your only choice. So just make sure that you really tamp down on your tripod into the sand so it's just not moving at all. So next, let's talk about exposure. Now for exposure, fireworks are pretty bright in general. Again, that depends on how far away you are from the fireworks, but in general it's good to start with a fairly low ISO and a fairly small aperture. So in most cases I'll usually start at ISO 400 and aperture around f9 or f11. And then after the first few shots, I'll monitor how they're looking. If it's a little too bright, then I'll reduce one or the other. A lot of times I'll end up around ISO 200 and f11, but again, it depends how far away you are from the fireworks. So make sure you're chimping. I know there's a sort of a stigma attached to chimping, and what chimping is take a shot and look at the resulting photo in your LCD. You really have to do that for fireworks photos for a couple of reasons. One being, make sure your exposure is right, and the other is something we'll get into in a little bit. So that's your aperture, your ISO. On shutter speed, I mentioned earlier about using bulb mode. So you're not actually using a set shutter speed because it's really hard to do with fireworks photography, because if you set it for, say, 4 seconds, then you take a shot, the 4 seconds is over before you're really done with the fireworks. Or maybe you go 4 seconds and it was so bright that it's just all blown out at 4 seconds. The best way to go is to go into bulb mode. That way each shot will have a different shutter speed depending on how bright the fireworks look. Now this takes some training on your part, and really in a few minutes you'll get the hang of it. Again, as long as you're chimping and paying attention to what the results are of your shots. And so you'll just organically get a feel for how long your shutter should be open depending on how bright the fireworks are. And we'll get into that with the demo. Alright, now for our demo. Now, I couldn't figure out a way to go to a real fireworks show and do this video because things would just be too out of control. So I found an application with a simulated fireworks show that turns out to be really realistic. It's called Fireworks HD from the Mac App Store. I'm sure there's plenty of really good fireworks programs for both Mac and Windows. And so that's how I'll be demoing this. And so this is to get a sense of the timing that I use to take these fireworks shots. So I usually let things calm down. Okay, now let's open the shutter. It's not real bright right now, so I'll leave the shutter open for a while. Okay, now close. I'll skip that one. Open. Good. Good. Close. Skip that. Open. One more. Okay, close. Open. Nice one. Okay, and now close, open, close it, open, close it. Oh, I should have kept that one actually. So anyway, hopefully you get the idea from that. A lot of times you try to anticipate when the next one will happen, or at least when you see an explosion start, then you hit the shutter. And you just go along. If it's really bright, then keep the shutter speed short. If they're really dim, then you may want to keep it open longer. And so that's the basic technique, and that will serve you for an entire fireworks show. Now let's get into a couple little tricks. Now, some cameras you can have multiple exposures, so you can put multiple photos onto one frame. Nikons have been able to do this for a while. Some recent Canons can do that too. But when you're in a fireworks situation, it may be a little cumbersome to be switching modes all the time. So for those who don't have multiple exposures or where it's just too cumbersome to switch, there's a method you can do. Using something black, a black card. I've used a black glove. And what you're going to do is treat this as sort of a second shutter by covering your camera lens while keeping your shutter open. So get a few fireworks, cover the camera lens, get a few more, cover it. Now why would you want to do this? If you're all familiar probably with the grand finale of fireworks. It signals the end of a fireworks show where they just, unleash everything. You can get sort of that effect during a show by this multiple exposure technique. Now, of course, you could just keep your shutter open longer to do that. But if you have other things in the photo, like I've had lit bridges in the photo, I took photos at a carnival where there was a fireworks show, and they had a nice Ferris wheel. And if I kept the shutter open for a really long time, the Ferris wheel would have been really blown out. So instead, I did keep the shutter open for a long time, but between fireworks shots, I covered the shutter, or covered the lens with the black glove. So it's something you can try. I found that in situations where all the fireworks are from your angle, coming from one point, this doesn't work because it just ends up completely blown out. But if you're at a fireworks show where you're more broadside to the show, where fireworks are coming from the left and the right and the middle, then this can work pretty well so that it looks like they're all firing at the same time when really they're not. So I'm going to do a quick demo of this. It's a little tricky to use. So here we go. I'm going to try. So first I'll open the shutter right there, collect a few shots. Now I'll cover the shutter. Now open it. Well, the shutter's staying open this whole time. Okay, just for demo's sake, I'll cover it again. Now I'll open it. Now I'll close the shutter. So, sort of a odd thing to do, but in some cases it can work really well. And now let's cover the last little trick. Now, the last technique I'll talk about is called focus blur. Now, your camera is of course going to normally be focused around infinity to shoot your fireworks. So what you do is, as a firework starts exploding, you open your shutter, and as it's exploding, you move the focus ring to take it to focus really closely. So you get some really strange effects. Now, you may want to change the aperture on your camera to be more wide open to get this effect, and reduce your ISO at the same time. Another alternative to that is to start with it out of focus, and while the firework is exploding and your shutter is open, you move it in focus. It's a little bit harder to do, but it's a nice variation to try. I wouldn't recommend doing this for an entire fireworks show, but it's nice to have a couple of these to show, and people will ask you, how on earth did you get a shot like that? So let's give it a try here. I'll start with it in focus. Let's verify. Now, these kinds of fireworks here are usually not the kind you want to do that with. Let's reduce the ISO to 100, and I set my aperture to 2.8. Okay, so that should work. And so I'll start with it in focus, and then I'll wait for a good opportunity here. So now let's open the shutter, out of focus. Okay, move it back in focus. Try a second shot here. Open the shutter, out of focus. Okay, try a third one. Open the shutter, out of focus. Now let's try it the opposite way. Okay, now let's start out of focus, in focus. Try that again. Out of focus, in focus. And so, again, worth giving it a try, and it's a lot of fun to do because you really don't know what you're going to get. And especially since real fireworks are a little more colorful than this, the colors give you some really nice effects with focus blur as well. So that is fireworks photography as I've done it. And so after this, I'll show you some samples of past fireworks photos that I've taken in different situations. And so hopefully you'll be able to get out this summer, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere this summer, and get some fireworks shots of your own. And I really hope the hints that I've given today will help you with that. So thanks a lot for watching, and I will talk to you later.